How's it going, YouTube? Coming to you today with another video, and today, guys, what to bring to you is my meta-analysis for the new format. Now, I was actually just at the Columbus Regional, and I got a really cool first look at the format, and I have a lot of information for you, because we're going to be talking a lot about the ins and outs of the format, the better cards, the better decks, and also, what are the previous decks that are still good in the new format? Because I feel like there are some that really dropped off, but some that are really shining right now, and that's definitely something to talk about. We're like 20-ish subs away from 15K, so if you're not already subscribed, definitely go ahead and subscribe to the channel. We'll hit our goal and then we'll push toward 20K, which will be really exciting. So if you haven't already checked out my sponsors over at Imperium Duelist, Dragon Shield, and RW Hobbies, definitely go ahead and check them out. All the links will be in the description below, and without further ado, let's hop right on into the video. So the first thing that I want to talk about today is going to be what are the most popular cards in the format. So this format is really interesting because Super Poly just became one of the most insane cards in the game thanks to Garura. That card's absolutely just nuts because of the fact that you can Super Poly almost any board. It really hurts Sprite. You shouldn't really play it against Tier because of the fact that their cards just float in the graveyard. But also if you play against like any combo deck, even Fluanderies, if they have like Empen plus just like a bird, it's pretty nuts just to be able to get the spot removal. And then Garura itself is also just a draw. It's really cool too if you're playing like Striker to someone like Garura and then Area Zero send it, get a card and then draw a card. So there's definitely a lot of really cool interactions behind Super Poly, but I just think that it's really toxic now because like even when Mud Dragon was a card, I felt like that was even more balanced of a Super Poly target than Garura because it's essentially just like if you're playing against a deck that's just like monotype, right? Like you're going to be able to Super Poly no matter what board they put up, which is pretty crazy. So then there's also going to be Triple Tactics Talents. I feel like this card is in a lot of people's main deck right now, but I think that it's very mid. I feel like that reason is because of the fact that there's a lot of people right now just not playing hand traps, and so that's always going to be the biggest issue when you're playing this card, is that it's either the most insane card or it's the worst card. And it's pretty insane to say too, because it's 3 banned cards in one, but at the same time you got to realize that this card relies on your opponent to play the game, and that card's usually not the best to play, where you could be playing something like Super Poly or like a Crow or a Bell that I think are just way more impactful right now, whereas this card might be good. Those cards will at least be able to interact with almost every deck. So I think that this card is definitely going to see another drop off because again, Triple Tactics Talents is only a good card when no one expects it. When everyone's playing it, everyone plays around it. So the second that it becomes relevant, it's bad. And so I think that's something where we'll see this card drop off really hard again. And that's what made it drop off the first time, right? Is the fact that like everyone knew it was in the game. So like everyone just started doing things in standby phase, battle phase, end phase. Just making sure that they were playing around this as much as possible. And the next thing is a lot of people are setting a pointer right now. I think this is still fine. It deals with cards like the Spear Mode, the Lava Golem, the Dark Ruler, and just really allows you to be able to not just lose to a huge blowout, which is pretty nice. It's definitely pretty crazy because you can just show your opponent like one card in your hand, right? Like you can get rid of everything else and then you just like don't lose to the one out that your opponent had. So I like a pointer a lot. I think this card's pretty good. It'll still be in the format for a while. The other thing that's not pictured here is Sanctum Scythe. This is going to be a really common one right now. Being able to summon Scythe to an Elf Arrow is kind of nuts. So that's definitely something that a lot of people are doing right now as well. It's a very good card. Definitely recommend on the sideboard. Spear Mode is very mid. I think that you should be on Lava Golem. I think that it's just so much easier to play on Spear Mode than it is a Lava Golem, because even if you just end on like Elf Toad, like you're still losing to Golem. So I think that's just a lot better. And then also just DD Crow. DD Crow should be at 3 in your main deck 100% of the time right now. It's just so good. There's a lot of people playing Tier, and so having Crow in the main is just going to be able to help you with that. Playing against Sprite, you can go ahead and banish the Ronin Totem, so the end board is literally just like IP and maybe red. And they'll usually have like smashers, but sometimes they just don't get to it. So there's always going to be different ways to go about what you hit in the deck, but Crow's usually just going to be insane because we'll talk about an interaction later too, even against Math Mech. It literally just beats the matchup, and then you also play around talents, which is really nice. So the next thing I want to talk about is going to be what are my top 5 decks so far this format. And so this does go in order in my opinion. So the first, like the best deck would be Sprite. I think this deck just has so much potential. Even though it's pretty solved already, I think that the deck still just does what it does the best. It has a really nice Zeus option. The deck already has an insane end board. It can play through quite a bit. I think that this is going to be the better deck over Tier for a while until Tier becomes really figured out. Once Tier becomes more figured out, it'll probably end up being the better deck. But for now, Sprite's just better. Tier, it's definitely a deck that you have to watch out for. Definitely really strong. Second place for sure. My third pick would be like the branded Eldlich deck. I think this deck is really insane. This is something that was just a really good meta call this format, and I think that is going to be continuing to be a good meta call. It's definitely something where if you don't want to pick like the top 2 decks, I definitely would recommend playing just like the branded Eldlich deck. It's very strong. Also, Dragon at number 4 here. Dragon's nuts right now. Being able to pseudo search Crow because of Chaotic Ruler is pretty nuts. I like that a lot. The combo's still pretty nice. Also, if you just want to go Heretic Seal pass against Sprite, it's also just insane because you have hand traps, and then you can just bounce or normal summon, which is pretty cool. And it just leads to a lot of times where Sprite just can't really play after you go first. So I think that's really nice too. We probably will end up seeing Tiding coming back into the Dragon deck, which I think is equally just fine. Because again, it's just really nice to be able to bounce monsters right now instead of like sending them to the grave. So something that we definitely could see. Also, for the 5th deck is going to be the P.U.N.K deck. I saw this deck all over the regional, and it was really good from what I saw. Being able to ogre on the field spell is definitely going to be impactful, but the deck itself has so much extension that I think that it's definitely going to be warranted as one of the best decks of the format. It's also relatively cheap outside of like Baron and Foxy Tunes, so I think this is definitely going to be one that you should pick up and one that you should at least test online to see if it's the deck for you. For 6th, I definitely have Math Mech. This deck is insane. It just didn't break into my top 5 because I felt like these other decks are just so much better right now. They're much more consistent. I do like the fact that Circular is a full combo, and then you can end like the Super Factorial with a lot of hand traps, which is pretty nice. But at the same time, I feel like the other decks just have a lot more resilience. They go second a lot better, and I just feel like they're going to be a lot better in the format. So let me know what you think down in the comments below. What are your top 5? I think that these are going to be what our format looks like, at least for right now. So for the next thing I want to talk about is Tearlaments. So Tearlaments is really insane. This is a deck that you really have to watch out for because of the fact that if they mill like multiple tiers, or if the deck really gets going, it can be very problematic. So if you are going first, I definitely recommend siding in Different Dimension Ground. This is a card that's just an auto pass from the deck. It's just something that they can't really play around. We see a lot of Sprite players right now playing D-Shifter even because of the fact that it just beats the matchup, and this is something that is really strong. So also like DD Crow and Bell, I side Bell at 3 and I main 3 DD Crow. Definitely should have Bell somewhere in your sideboard if you're not already maining it, because if you do play against tier, it gives you 6 cards to go ahead and shut down their initial combo, which is really nice. Just going ahead and negating the one that's in the graveyard trying to shuffle back. So Bell, Crow, these are going to be your number 1 ways to go ahead and shut down the 2-element deck. Definitely recommend these two. Bell is really insane in multiple matchups right now, especially even Math Mech. Just shutting down the Super Factorial is also just equally very good. And any of the adventure decks still, of course, Bell negates the Enchantress. So it's just a really strong option right now. The next thing is going to be talking about Sprite. I mentioned this in my last video, but if you didn't see that, Cyber Dragon actually just outs the entire Sprite board, which is pretty crazy. So what you're allowed to do, essentially, if they don't summon like the Dupe Frog, which again, it's like 50-50 on if they do or not, you can go special summon Cyber Dragon, and then you can contact fuse with the Elf and summon Mega Fleet, and then swing over the Toad. So it's pretty nice. You also just use 1 card to do that, and you don't have to worry about like the red. So I like the Cyber Dragon a lot. I think that it's really strong. The other card is Offerings to the Doomed. We've seen this in quite a few decks right now. This is just a really smart card to be playing. I think that it's really impactful. Also against like Sprite, being able to clear the normal summon is really strong, because again, if they're able to commit that normal summon, a lot of people right now are going like normal summon, no effect, so they don't like lose to Gamma. So having things like Offerings is really insane. Having like Dark Ruler is equally just fine. You usually need more than just that, but it's still a decent card. DD Crow on the Ronin Totem is really strong as well. And then also Lava Golems, just again go ahead and shut down the Elf plus the Toad is pretty nice. The other thing too that I was seeing is that like Offerings to the Doomed in multiple matchups right now, and just being able to get the spot removal, it's something that if you don't have a playset of it, I would just pick up a playset just to have it and test it. It's pretty nice. Because a lot of times, a lot of people are worried about like the no draw, but at the same point, like if you have a big board set up, like the draw never mattered. Like if you lost that turn, like if your board got broke, you're probably losing anyway. So like in my opinion, I would just say it's worth it. It's a really good card. Also, talking about Dragon, again, you can pseudo search the DD Crow, which is really nice. That's another reason why I really like Dragon right now. The other thing though is that if Dark Ruler is really prominent in the format and you end on like Heretic Seal and like your hot red, you can go ahead and just save your Basil Rose Shoot, and then when they Dark Ruler, you can chain Basil and then chain Hot Red to negate the Dark Ruler. So it's just another way to be able to make a bigger board and just not really care about like the bigger blowouts. So I think that's really cool too. I think that the deck has a lot of promise because not only that though, you can make the Heretic Seal like I said before, and you can go ahead and bounce the normal summon, but you can also just make like Herald of the Arclight, which is equally just an insane card. If you're playing like the Souls package like you should be, and then you summon a Red Rose, you can go ahead and summon your Herald, which is really nuts against Tearlaments, to be honest. Like, Herald is just an auto win against that deck. They have to normal summon to swing over it, and if you already have your Heretic Seal, then it just was never happening. So it's just a really cool card, and it's something that I definitely recommend if you are playing Dragon to at least start playing again. But the card itself is very strong. And that's another one against Tearlaments that if you use that, you usually just win. Math Mech. So essentially against Math Mech, the way that you play around talents is you wait until your opponent's like done with their turn, and then when you go to play the game, if they flip Super Factorial on you and they make their targets, you just crow the Diameter because it has to target 3 monsters with different names, and the Laplacian needs 3 monsters. So if you go ahead and crow the Diameter, the only thing that they can summon is the Elimbertion, and they just search. Like, it doesn't matter. It's not even like a negate. Like, they just search. So it's pretty crazy. DD Crow is really nice because you're also just not using it on their turn and then getting hit by like tactics. You're just waiting, you're using it on Diameter, and then the Super Factorial is essentially just Rhoda. So it's very good, very, very strong. Save your Crow for your turn. Against Punk, you just ogre the field spell. It's very strong. This card's really insane, just being able to get so much extension and then the free draws. So you just want to go ahead and ogre this as soon as possible. Also, against Branded Eldlich, you just want to Ash the Branded Fusion. It's usually very good here. You don't really want to save it for like Sanguine. Like, if you have to hit Sanguine because they didn't open like the Branded engine, then you can. Also just using the Imperm or Valor on the Albion to go ahead and just shut down that line to get the Mirror Jade. So I do hope that you enjoyed the video today because I want to give you a quick update on what the format looked like and essentially what we were dealing with. I could see the format started getting a little solved after the first weekend, but it's going to take a little while before it actually gets solved. So this is kind of a first look at what the format is going to be like. So if you haven't already checked out my Discord, Twitch, and Twitter, and my Instagram, definitely go ahead and look at the description below. And then also, if you need a coaching session over at Metafy, feel free to hit me up if you have any questions. And I hope that everyone has a wonderful night, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Thank you.